HC Nation! Hey, Zach Edwards here. We're just waiting for Connor to come on. He's our historian, and this is actually going to be our Monday meeting. I'm going to tap you in so you can see everything that's going on. What's up, Connor?
Hi, who are you talking to?
The video. Yeah. So, okay, I wanted to tell you about California. So I told you I was going to California. I only knew about it for about a week. So I got all my plane tickets. Everything was expensive. Got out there. The first convention was awesome. It was like 4 hours long, and it was a great amount of revenue. But the second one came back the next day, and it was 3 hours, and I made probably a sixth of what we made the day before. And it was like, what? And so the first day, I mean, made it worth, and I was hoping for the same the next day. It was okay. I mean, it pays our bills, which is great. Done. But as I was getting onto the plane, I actually felt like my whole body just started shivering. I'm in the line in Southwest. My body starts shivering. I go into the plane. I'm sitting between two people, and I'm shivering up a storm, but I was able to fall asleep. I wake up halfway through the flight. I'm still shivering. I reach up, trying to turn off the fans. They're all already off. So it's just me. And then when I wake up again, when the plane lands, I'm sweating from every pore. So I ended up with a fever. It's like, so all of Friday was like out. I couldn't do anything on Friday. Couldn't do it. I barely did anything on Saturday. I got some packages out and things like that. But yesterday was just miserable. And then this morning, waking up at 3 o'clock thinking, I'm fine. Because at the end of the day, I felt really good. And then I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm sweating. Every joint hurts in my body. I'm like, no, not again. It was not the best weekend.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm having my own medical problems.
Oh no. You okay?
Yeah, fine. It's just an annoyance, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, really annoying.
Well, yeah, it's not to go back to me. I'm really sorry that you're going through that.
It's not bad. It's all right. You're all good.
One of the other thing that happened with me is this morning I realized that everything just tasted weird. And I realized I had a metallic taste. I'm like, wait. So I looked up online, what are causes of metallic taste in your mouth? Cold.
Yeah, that's always a good idea.
Yeah, cold and infections. I'm like, great. So I've got some sort of, well, I guess I've got a cold, but that's why I'm chewing gum. So I'm not being disrespectful. I wouldn't usually do that in a meeting, but I cannot stand that taste. It's a pretty bad taste. So yeah, last week the conventions were okay. I did get to meet with Matt Kirby. He is the creator of Apples to Apples. So do you know what Matt? It's a party game. Here, actually, I've got it on the shelf. 1 second. So this is Apples to Apples.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
various comparisons.
Yeah. So you basically pick out a green card that says something like crazy. Every person has, I think it's 7 cards in their hand that have like everything from Marilyn Monroe to my first date. Has all these different words. And so when someone throws down crazy, you're like, okay, my first date. But you're playing to the judge because they're one of the players every turn. It's a new player every turn. One of those players is the judge. So like if someone's really political and they say they're a Democrat or Republican, then you throw down a Hillary Clinton or Obama or George Bush or whatever, or Trump. I don't think there's a Trump in here. It's too new. Actually, there probably is because Trump's been big before politics. But yeah. But talking to him and his partner, and there's some collaboration that we want to do. So I thought that would be really interesting.
What are you thinking? What are we thinking?
Well, he has a website that's a history-based website that it doesn't have anything close to what we're doing. But there might be some sort of collaboration that we want to do with bringing his name in. At the same time, I have to be careful about what we do with collaborations because partnerships and stuff like that just never really work out. So, but it'd be really cool to just have him to ask him questions, pick his brain, that type of thing. So he's already asked me to pick his brain on to check out his website and figure out what's good and what's bad from it. So, and I would have done it earlier. I would have probably done it Friday, Saturday. I couldn't do anything. So, how about your week? How was your week?
Fine, doing World War One. I combined the Vickers and the Eindecker because there's only so much you can write about a World War One airplane.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
So I combined those two, and the unit that came out of it was beautiful, in my opinion. So doing that, and I'm halfway through the World War One deck.
Did you add any additional aircrafts, or anything, or mention any?
No. Do you want me to?
No.
Because what's in there, it's the FP5 and the Eindecker 1, and those were early war, and there's these are planes people really don't know about because everybody knows about the Red Baron and the triplane and all that and the Albatross, but it's very good to have the earlies, and then took the American Aces, Frederick Libby and stuff like that, and I did them, pulled them together, and so we're still in World War One at the moment.
Awesome. Have you heard about the Night Witches?
Yes.
Okay. What planes didn't they fly like World War One planes into?
They flew interwar aircraft.
Okay.
So they flew a biplane,
mm-hmm.
2 wings, and a single engine, and it's made of paper and crap. Well, maybe not paper, but it's not World War II.
Definitely not crap.
But they were definitely archaic
mm-hmm.
by the time the war started, but it worked very effectively for the Night Witches because they would often stop their engines and just glide into their target, which worked very well. And the stall speed of a Messerschmitt Me-109, which is made in German fighter World War II, was faster than the optimal speed of the Night Witches were flying. So it was very difficult to shoot these things down, apparently. So but that's the thing with the Soviet Union. They Soviet Union showed that females in large numbers could fight well, in proper roles and stuff like that. So that's what was really unique about the Soviets in World War II. A lot of other people like Poles, they had women fighting obviously, but not in the numbers that the Soviet Union will feel.
Interesting. Yeah, because in the game we have one woman that's a sniper.
Pavlo, blah, blah, blah. You have, oh God, what's her name? I can't remember her name. Pavlo,
I know every player in our game would just be laughing. It's like, it's this! I'm with you, though. They actually laugh at me, the fact that I can't remember all the names of all the cards. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have 700 cards. What?
500 of them. There's like 600 of them. Some of these beans in the butts, they have hard to pronounce names. So,
do you know the Viking that we have, the archer, Einar from Broskirfer? I know it's wrong, but I can't ever say it.
I've seen him. Be interesting to do him later.
Do his write-up.
Him soon. Maybe I can take clips from History's Vikings and just use that as history, that's just wrong because that show has so many problems with it. But it's entertaining. Yeah. So whenever people get angry about movies from Hollywood, like Braveheart, I'm like, it's Hollywood. They don't know nothing about historical accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
You're there to be entertained, so let me be entertained.
Yep. So, okay, for today's rant, I want to.
No microphone, though.
No microphone. I know it's supposed to come. I haven't looked at locations yet, or tracker on it. It's in the mail. I know that. I just don't know where. So I'll pick tracking up later. But there was something that came up earlier. What do you know on the Vikings?
Well, the Vikings. So Vikings is not a people.
Okay.
This is a big mistake. Everybody calls them Vikings. Who are they? Oh, they're the Vikings. Vikings was not a people.
Okay.
Right? It's something you did. So if I was a shoe shiner, for example, but I was born in, I don't know, Ireland, right? If we're contextualizing this, I suppose, that's like calling me a shiner because I shine shoes, you know. The Vikings, to go a Viking, I mean, raid and stuff, so Raiders, Norse Raiders, hence Vikings, hence the reason why people call them Vikings. But stop it. Oh,
yes, sir.
So, you should call them, I don't know, medieval Scandinavians, or you could call them the Rus, right? Because when they came down the great eastern rivers in Russia, the Volga and the Dnieper, right? And they established their trading posts, especially Kiev. The Slavs began to refer to them or called them Rus, and it's from that you get, the Slavic Confederation of Kievan Rus, and it's from that you get the foundations of Russia and Ukraine and things all like that. So that's what's happening in the East. But everybody tends to focus on what the medieval Norse were doing in the West, in Ireland and especially England, which is dull by comparison because excuse me, the Scandinavians, they built these great dragon ships, these long ships with the dragon figurehead on it. Yeah. And these things were in the oceans. And this is when in the 9th and 10th centuries, that's extraordinary for its day and age. What is more, the Scandinavians, I'm just going to keep calling them, when they get to where they're going, they often assimilate into, the culture around them. So in the East, the Rus, they, what do? They begin to intermarry amongst the Slavs, right? Because there's only a few of them. So they begin to intermarry amongst the Slavs, and, they become almost as, more Slavic than the Slavs themselves, you might say, like they do in Ireland. Because in Ireland, they become, they're called the Hibernio Norse, So what they do is they come in, and by the way, all the major Irish port cities that we have today, Wexford, Cork, Limerick, even Dublin, right? Dublin was a Norse settlement, before it was anything else. It was founded by the Norse. So was Cork, so was Limerick, so was Wexford, etc., etc. And it's from there that you get the birth of the earliest Irish ports, which are still here today. Excuse me. And in Ireland, they carve out their own little niche areas. They build the city, naturally consolidate their holds on the lands around it, and they become powers in their own right. And they intermarry for political gain and alliances and things like that. And naturally, through intermarriage, what happens? Their children, they start learning Gaelic, Irish rather, and they start wearing Irish clothing. And, pretty soon the distinction between, a native Gael, right, and, or the descendants of Norsemen, it becomes blurred to a degree, largely. So,
wow.
Yeah, that.
No, I had no clue about that. So basically, Viking is the verb, the act of going a Viking.
I mean, I'm not a linguist by any stretch of the imagination, so I can't tell you specifically where that word comes from. But to go a Viking, it meant to, raid essentially. So, and they were pretty damn good at it. But what else? But what they did, and this is their true genius. So they got into the rivers. So in the east you have the Volga and you have the Dnieper. In Ireland, for example, they sailed up the Boyne and they sailed up the Shannon, and in England they went up the Thames and the Medway, and in what is now France, they sailed up the Seine to besiege Paris, and they went up the Scheldt in what is now Holland and stuff. So their ability to penetrate the interior of the European continent was made so by their brilliance at navigating the rivers.
Yeah.
And then you gotta love their ingenuity and their sophistication in naming places, because Newfoundland, I mean, that's just so original. What is this place called? Newfoundland.
I dubbed this Newfoundland. Yeah, we found this land, Newfoundland.
That's freaking great. And then Iceland. It's icy, so we call it Iceland.
And then Greenland, because it was the summer, it was Greenland. Yeah.
Yeah, they're freaking funny. But also, politically speaking, they're not necessarily unified, and their society, it's interesting, it was a lot more democratic than people make it out to believe, So you have your kings and you have your earls and things of that nature, but, the people, the wider people, they had a lot more say in their own government than, say, the Romans did. The average Roman had in his government, for example. Also, there are quite a few, naturally, because Scandinavians, I mean, it's very difficult up there in terms of, arable land, and, the winters, I hear, are just brutal. So this is, this is part of the impudence to go around and spread all over the place. And, we have plenty of evidence to show that it was the medieval Norse going again down the Volga and whatnot. They're the first ones to, from Northern Europe anyway, to really come into contact with the Muslim caliphates in Baghdad. They were able to go all the way down to Baghdad.
Wow.
I know, how about that? Huh. And they called Constantinople, they called it Miklagard, right?
Okay.
And
they didn't try to pillage that city, did they?
Yeah, they tried to take it.
Really?
Yeah, in the 9th century, they tried to take it. They came up with their boats, their long boats. And, they hadn't found a person. They hadn't found an enemy they couldn't crush outright with brute force. But this is, the medieval Romans. And the medieval Romans have flamethrowers with Greek fire. So what happens? For Odin, maybe that's not such a good idea. Yeah.
So what was the significance of Berserker? A Viking Berserker?
So Berserker is interesting because, we used to think that these guys would just chew, I don't know what they would chew. They would chew something, and they would, it would so arouse themselves in a fury in battle that they're like freaking tanks. They just go one-man wrecking machine, charge, break through the opposing line, and just boom, 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 boom.
It's like a person on like meth. Like, I don't know. From what I hear from police officers, you can shoot a person with meth and he'll still get up and still fight you. And you knock him down. It takes like 5 people just to take that one person down.
I don't know what the drug was, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's like
something juicy, though.
Man.
But perfect example. So Charlemagne, right? He establishes the Carolingian Empire in the West. Okay, and then his 3 grandsons, they're like, I want this part, and I want that. So the grandsons, they go to war against each other and get partition and civil war and stuff like that. And then about 100 years, 150 years after the death of Charlemagne, am I right? I don't know, around there. But the Duchy of Normandy, right, where William the Conqueror came from, that was actually founded by Rollo, right? So have you ever seen the Viking, historical TV show?
No.
No. I encourage you to watch it. It's great. But anyway, Rollo was this, Norse raider, obviously, who's operating in Western France, what is now Western France. And the Western Frankish king, in order to get him to stop fighting against him, he's like, here, I'll give you a slice of France on the periphery of France, and it can be your own to do with what you want. And from there, and then they solidify it with marriage, obviously. And from there, you get the Duchy of Normandy, right?
Uh-huh.
And Normans, the Normans, what are they going to do? They're going to go into the Mediterranean in southern Italy, and they're going to reconquer Sicily from, the Muslim emirate that had conquered it, a century before from the Romans. And they do so with a handful. So the Normans being the, descendants of, medieval Scandinavian raiders, I mean, they're very similar because they're able to do this with handfuls of men and women too, because there are plenty of women in the Viking armies, Scandinavian armies.
So you said it too.
Yeah, I do it. So
what ended them? What ended the Viking conquering era?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Cultural assimilation for one.
Mm-hmm.
They built great trading posts like Kiev, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was originally a Norse settlement. And like I said before, intermarriage with the Slavs, they're setting down roots. There's not really a need to go exploring anymore. In the West, similar situation, the Hiberno Normans, true, they came in and they conquered, but, through intermarriage with the native Irish, again, they begin to set down roots. Also, victory of the native peoples over them. So when we're looking at England, for example, when the Danes arrive in the late 9th century, right, they're in the space of a decade, they topple the great, Saxon kingdoms of Northumbria, and they took Mercia and East Anglia, but they can never take Wessex. Well, they try to take it a number of times, but Wessex will always beat them back, and eventually, the army of Wessex, it'll eventually spring outward and reconquer most of the territory, and unify it finally, and it becomes the land of the Angles, right? England, the birth of England, So, variety of things. So they're setting down roots, Rollo in Normandy. You have a guy called Dietrich in Dublin. Yes. We could talk about Clontarf in a second. And, Kiev and stuff like that. So there's not necessarily really a need or a want to go exploring anymore. Plus, you see the Christianization of them,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
The missionaries, they go in, true. Missionaries, they go in, of course, via the rivers, and they begin to, convert these people en masse. And, that leads to a tempering of the Norse spirit for raiding and things like that. But it lasts a good, 400, 300 years. Also, you have political centralization of power in, Scandinavia. You will see sprouting up kingdoms like Sweden and Norway and Denmark, and from them you'll get, personal unions like the Kalmar Union between Denmark and Sweden and Norway, and, you get this distinctive national identity right? The Swedes are the Swedes, and the Norwegians are the Norwegians, and the Danes are the Danes. True, they all come from a similar, cultural and political background, but they are different to a degree. So a number of things brings about the.
So what you're saying, like overall, the Vikings is like, and hopefully this comparison is right, is like Genghis Khan, where Genghis Khan just like conquered, and then basically ran out of steam. But like with the Vikings, they conquered until like assimilation and all these other things. But they didn't really have one leader to say it was like this one person, like Genghis Khan and his group. Because it wasn't Genghis Khan that did all the battling, it was his people. So
yeah, so that is a very apt comparison, because as soon as, in the wake of all this conquest, I'm just going to say Vikings because it's easier, because everybody knows it, knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, so after they conquer, right, the Vikings, they settle up. Similarly, and then there's a lot of infighting between them. Similarly, the Mongols, they go conquering every which way, left and right. Mm-hmm. And then when this ceases, you start to get infighting, right? And then you get partitions amongst the empires, and then, of course, they begin to assimilate. Like, the Ilkhanate, which is in the east, most of them convert to Islam, and they become, the basis for the not nomad. They are part of the foundation of modern Central Asia. So Central Asia is full of people with a great tradition of horseback riding. There's a lot of
Mongols.
Cultural similarities between ethnic Mongolians and, modern Uzbeks.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, even though they're, thousands of miles apart across, Mongolia is generally considered to be in Eastern Asia, whereas Northeastern Asia around there, whereas Uzbekistan centrally. So, yeah.
Well, Connor, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I have a few more that I wanted to ask you, but we'll save it for next time. I like the fact that you're dissolving the misconceptions of history. So that, and that's basically this is why I hired you. This is why I'm so passionate about having you as part of the group. But also, this is why like Historical Conquest was created, because there's so many misconceptions, and history is history. It should be all one information. Doesn't matter what country you come from, and that's what I hope to do with that website. I want to break down those barriers.
Website coming?
End of October, first week of November. Remember, it was supposed to be the end of October, and then the functional one's mid-October, and then it was supposed to be done by the end of October. But I also delayed him a week, so it might actually be like the first week of November. If it comes in on time, I'll go to the NSSC, the National Social Studies Council, which is down in Austin this year, and then the TCEA, which is the Teachers Convention down in, it's not Fort Worth, another Texas large city, might be Austin, but well, one's in Austin, might be Houston, I don't know, I'll find out. But yeah, those will be two big conventions, I guess, to go to show this thing off. And hopefully the guy gets it right the first time, and I mean, people go gung-ho about it, because this is what we need to have in history. And then it's not just going to be in America, we're going to have it translated. So everything that you produce will then be reproduced in everything from Portuguese, and we send it down to Brazil, to Japanese, to, I don't know if China would let us in, South Korea and Australia and all these other ones. It's like, this is not Americanized history. This is history. And so that's also, I like the fact that you're getting sources from other places, because most people are just like, oh yeah, I'll go on the web, get all this Americanized information. No. We want pure facts. Like, these guys are not Vikings. So.
Well, I mean, they were. It's just they would not have referred to themselves as Vikings.
Yeah.
Just like the medieval Romans would not have called themselves the Byzantines.
Mm-hmm.
were the Romans, you know?
They did actually say, okay, Romans, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definite shift towards Greek, but the eastern half of the Roman Empire, the Greek language had always been the lingua franca, so it wasn't really that much of a shift.
I've got another one. So this is next time, so you can think about it over the week. But I want to find out why Greece fell apart.
At what point in its history? It's done that a couple of times.
That's true. It's still doing that. But I mean, back before the Romans came over in power, when the Greeks fell apart and the Romans grew.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Awesome.
For sure. Also,
if you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.